I'm Nia and this is Vicky and we work in the office at the Mendip School. Vicky has a diagnosis of autism and I'm going to ask her some questions about how that affects her. So Vicky, can you tell me a bit about your role at the Mendip School?
Yep, so I am an admin assistant and receptionist in the office. So I'm answering phone calls and making emails and doing odd jobs around the office such as filing, and I organise the annual reviews of their EHCPs.
Fab, thank you. And so when did you get diagnosed with autism?
So I was diagnosed with autism when I was 13. It was a very long process. My parents knew that there was something not sort of typical about me. So they went through the process of a lot of different assessments. I was tested for things like ADHD and learning difficulties and things like that. So eventually they became aware of autism, and it was very sort of unusual for girls to get diagnoses of autism so early on. Normally it was later in their teens before they would get that diagnosis. So it was something that they hadn't even thought about. And it was basically due to the fact that I took things very literally. I was found it very difficult to understand jokes. And with social interactions, I was quite sort of far behind my peers. And all of those things together made them realise that I wasn't quite the same.
I think you managed to get some of my jokes now though, don't you?
Occasionally. Sometimes I just laugh and hope for the best.
So what sort of challenges did you experience when you were growing up and when you were at school? What did you find difficult?
I found that quite a lot of my friends at school wouldn't quite understand what was different about me. So it was more sort of the lack of understanding that was the biggest hurdle. Once people started to get an awareness of autism, and it became a lot easier to say, I'm autistic, I struggle with this, and people then would adapt better. But when I was growing up, it was such an uncommon thing to have diagnosed that it was difficult for a female with autism to have that understanding. Girls have a lot of different traits to the typical autistic traits, so it is quite difficult to sort of show. I was very good at masking, so I would hide whenever I was feeling slightly unsure or slightly anxious about anything. I would hide that quite a lot, so it was a big hurdle to overcome. I think I've got better at showing when I feel like that, which then helps other people help me, which is helpful.
So how does autism affect you now, and sort of have you got coping strategies for certain things?
Yeah, as I was diagnosed quite sort of early in my teens, I had quite a lot of coping strategies put in place before I got diagnosed. But I use quite a lot of the coping strategies still to this day. I'm very strict on my routine, so I'll get up at the same time, I'll do the same things every morning, and every evening it will be the same again. So it's very structured, which helps. So that is the biggest hurdle overcome, is that change of routine. So that's a good one to have in place.
And what would you say to somebody that has a diagnosis of autism if they're a younger person? Have you got any advice or sort of?
It gets easier. The older you get, the more strategies you put in place, and it gets a lot better to be able to cope with your autistic traits and to be able to share how you're feeling. Sometimes that's a big sort of hurdle to overcome, and once you get past that, and once you're able to say to someone, I'm feeling anxious, I feel upset, once you can get that in place, it's a lot easier. So just keep going and hope that you get that soon.
Well, thank you for sharing
No
your
problem.
sort of experiences with us, and hopefully it will be a bit of a eye-opener to some people around the school about what your experiences of autism are, and
Definitely.
we're very happy to have you working in the office with us.
Thank you very much.